Hello, welcome to this mini lab. And here we are going to introduce the scope of declaration. First, let me introduce some basic scope rules for you. As we have mentioned in our lectures, that the scope of a parameter declaration is the body of the method in which the declaration appears. And the scope of a local variable declaration is from the point at which the declaration appears to the end of that block. However, the scope of a local variable declaration that appears in the initialization section of for statements, headers in the body of the for statement, and the other expressions in the header. And we say that a method of field scope is the entire body of the class. And this enables a class instance methods to use the fields and the other methods of the class. So here we are going to write a small application to let the program to indicate the differences between the field scope and the local variable scope. So let's begin. First, let's create a class. We give it a name, scope. This is the spelling, right? Okay. Within the class, we'll have field instance variables. Let's say that is private static int x. We initialize it as 1. So this is the field variable. And after that, let's write our main method, ESVM. And we leave it empty temporarily. And let's see what we were going to have here. And how about let's have a function that is use the local variable, right? So that is supposed to be a void. We just need to print the value of the local variable. So we say that is use local variable, this method. And then how about let's have another method that is use field. So this is almost the same, static void use field. And let's first design our use local variables here. So let's say, suppose in this method, we have a variable that has the same name as x. However, we assign the value of 5 to it for initialization, right? And then how about let's print some prompt here. We say the local x on entering the method use variable is let's print out this number, okay? %d, let's give it a new line. And here that is x. And after that, okay, we'll need to modify the symbol here to printf. And after that, we increase the x ++. And then let's sort out. Local x, we say that before exit the method. So this is on entering. This will print out the x value before the program exits this method. So we will have a clear view of how the variable x changed within this method. And how about this one? Okay, we're going to almost do it the same, but we don't need to initialize because we already initialized out of all the inner methods. So field x on entering the method, use the use is, and then let's change the field method as x multiplied by 10. And after that, no, it's not file, it's field. Is it spelling right? Exit. Maybe exiting. Sorry, there's a typo. And then we will have the value that is changed with like multiplied by 10 of the field. That means, okay, suppose x is suppose 1 here, right? And after this operation, before existing the use field method, and x will be 10. That is these two methods, and in our main method, let's write the whole control logic here. Let's decide what are we going to do. Now let's declare another x. This is the x is for the main method. So that is int x. We make it 5, okay? This is method's local variables. And the local variable x will shadow fields x. That means in the main method, this one, 5 will go first to be assigned to the x before calling the static initialization. That is because the x is within the main method. So the main method should give its own initialization a priority. So let's print out some prompt here. Local x in main is, sorry, it's supposed to be a p. Okay. And we will put x here. So this is the local method, local variable for x. Although it is in the main method, but main method is a method. The local variable should go first comparing to the field. And how about let's call the use local variable, and then let's call the use field, and let's call the use local variable again, and then let's call the use field again. So we call the local variable and the use field method 2 times, right? And let's print out the method again. Let's see what happened. Event is, okay, we don't need to write anything here. So let's first guess, okay? Let's guess what is going to print here. So here we are in the local method, although it is main, but it is still a specific local method. So x here is supposed to be 5. And what about use the local variable? And here we call this method, and within this method, it has its own copy of x, right? So we say that in the method in the method, it will give the priorities to its own copy of the instance variables. So that means the 5 is assigned to x here. And since this is 5, I think they're supposed to be, let's change it to 25. So here it's supposed to be output 25, right? Because it is within the local method here, so it enjoys the priority. And after that, x increased by 1. So here, before existing this method, the x is supposed to be 26. So you may ask here, so what is a local x here? We can try to output. So whether the local x here is going to be 5 or 26, okay, we will run this program, so you will see the output. And you can guess what is the output here. How about using the field? We have the method here, and after we call the use the field method, it will immediately print out, okay, the field x on entering the method use field is something. So what is the x here? So what is the output here? Is it 5 or 26 or 1? I don't know. And after that, we call the use local variable again. So that means it will return to this method. And as we know that since x has its own initialization, so I don't think it will change. So it may keep the 25 and 26 in the output here, right? But how about using the field? And see, use field variable. So we don't need to we can remove this little new line. So what's the output for the following two methods? I don't know. So let's run. So can I move the scope here? Okay, I cannot make them in a row view. So okay, let's just have a look over it line by line. So this is the output for this program. As we can see here, once the program enter into the main, and we have mentioned in our first lecture that the main method is the entry point of this application. So once it starts from the entry point, and then we have an initialization for x, right? And it will print out local x in main is 5 here. So we are correct. And after that, we will move to the use local variables here, right? So we shift to this method. And then we have another initialization for x, which is 25, and we print out its number here. We say, okay, it's 25 and 26 before exiting the method, right? And then we return to the main method once we have done with use the local variables method, and then we followed by a prompt that indicates the local variable in main is, let's see, okay, as you can see that the local x in main keeps 5 here, right? So that means the method doesn't change the x value in the main method. And after that, we will jump into the use field method here. So let's guess 5 or 26 or 1. Let's look at the output. And we can see field x on entering the method use the field is 1. That means if we don't give it an initialization in this field, so the variables we called x will fetch the value from the global domain, which is referring to the field outside all the method. So that's why we have the prompt saying that field X on entering the method use field is 1. We don't pass any value to this method, so it will just call the global field. And then conduct an operation that is multiply by 10, and then we output the value, which is 10. And after that, we call the use local variable again. And here the local variable x doesn't change because it reinitialized the instance variable x as 25 again. That means, okay, it doesn't have any cache or memory of memorizing the x within this method. Each time we call this method, it will reconduct everything from the scratch within this method. That means, okay, the x is reassigned as 25. Or we say it's just a normal initialization, which is this one, and output the 26 before exiting the method, right? However, as you can see, in the main method, we go into the use method, use field again, the second time. Things has changed, right? Here, in the first time we get into the use field, the x is initialized as 1. However, here it is initialized as 10. That is because before the first time we existing the method used field, we already make the x to be 10. So that means in the global domain, the x is already changed to 10. So in the second time we get into this method, we will using the updated x here. So that's why it is 10. And then before existing the method, x has been multiplied by 10. So that makes the output to be 100. Since everything doesn't change the x value in the main method, so at the end of this method, we print out the x again, which is referring to the local variable within the main method. So main method x is still 5. And that is for the scope of the declaration. And I hope you can enjoy implementing this one. And if you have any questions regarding the scope of this method, these methods and the logic, and feel free to post the thread in the discussion board, and I will reply to you as early as possible.